Hello, everybody. This is Dr. Dan Cordelicchio. I am your host for Destination Health Podcast, Finding Function in a Dysfunctional World. Want to thank everybody for listening to us. Our podcast has grown, and I want to thank all of our listeners for coming in and listening to what we have to say here. And it's always because of our guests, because we really have the best of the best of the best. And this week, I'm very excited. This week is no less. We have a great guest on today. Her name is Briana Theroux. Briana, how are you today?
Great. How are you?
I am doing well. How is it in Arizona today?
It's still in the 90s here, so it's very nice. I like it.
I think you and I were discussing this. I think if I want 90s, I need to live next to the ocean or the beach, which is my favorite. And in the Northeast right now, it's getting a little bit colder, which is okay.
I know. I just came here from Manhattan last year, so.
That's right. You just moved from Manhattan and you went out to Arizona. You know, so you went from the hustle and bustle to, is it dry humidity out there?
Yeah, it's very dry. It's dry heat. I love it because
it's dry heat. Do you guys have a pool in the back at least?
We do have a pool.
All right, because you got to do the backstroke when it's like 90 degrees out. All right, enough of this nonsense. Our viewers are like, let's go. Let's get this thing moving. All right, so Briana, behavioral health coach, certified in dynamic eating psychology. I got to know about this. And mind-body nutrition, I'm so interested. I find that fascinating. Through the Institute for the Psychology of Eating. Her work combines the powerful new fields of mind, body, and clinical nutritional sciences. That's right, clinical nutritional science is very powerful right now. With an appreciation for you as an individual, epigenetics, I love that. She uses a unique, holistic, and results-oriented approach to eating and health issues. One that integrates behavioral science with food and nutrition to help anyone improve their quality of life. Briana, welcome. How did you get involved in this? How did you get involved in this field? I find this fascinating. Dynamic eating psychology. What was the motivating factor? We all do.
Yeah, so I started out, I was doing pre-med when I was 18. When I first started going to college, I always knew I wanted to be in medicine somehow. But then life happened and I needed to make money. And so I ended up going to cosmetology school and I owned my own salon for 10 years. Well, during that time, I had a lot of health issues. And so I was obsessively reading about everything and I would write online. And so I was picked up by a lot of people, doctors, and they had me come in and like teach nutrition classes for their staff. And that's how I got started. And I was confused why people could not apply the diet information that I was giving, right? It all
happens a lot.
Psychology.
Right, it happens a lot. I'm thinking of a half a dozen patients that they don't have that headspace, that mindset to continue on.
And
right?
It's like I keep doing these same things over and over and I don't know why. Like that is most people's issue. It's not a lack of like dieting information out there. It's they don't understand why they keep making the same choices over and over.
So when we're done here, I'm thinking of one patient that's a friend of mine. She knows who she is and she knows she's getting a text after this. And I think that Briana is going to have to help you out because you lose 30, 40 pounds and then you go back and you're right where you left off. And I said to her last week, listen, you could have been at 50, 60 pounds. You've been with me for over a year at this point, and that diabetes and so forth. So let's talk about dieting mindset. What is that? And how do you help out individuals?
Yeah. So everything is different with every person. Everyone's eating challenges are not necessarily something being wrong with them. Most people think they're like, there's something wrong with me. I'm just dumb or I'm just meant to be fat. And that's usually not the root of the issue. The root of the issue is either the negativity bias, the fading effect bias, thinking that you need to moderate foods. That's a big one. Not everyone can moderate foods, and you need to understand if you fit into that category or not. If you're yo-yoing, you're probably not a moderator because when you try to moderate foods, you gain all that weight back, right?
Right, sure.
And so that's what I do is I try to find out, because usually it could be like finances, it can be family, it can be trauma.
Right. What is it that you usually see? What are some of the issues that you see and that it translates into this this mindset where they can't lose weight or eat appropriately? What are like the
Yeah.
top three that you're finding in your practice?
A big one is childhood sexual abuse.
Really?
Yes. People, like a lot of like women, even men, experience this. They put on a lot of extra weight to keep from feeling attractive because they don't want to be approached
Interesting.
sexually.
Right.
That's a big one. And so we need to like release the shame around that and those associations with that.
Right.
Another one is the moderator abstainer thing. I think a lot of people think they need to moderate because grandma told them that moderation is what you need to do to be healthy.
Right.
And
you can eat, for me,
yep.
I can eat macaroni and I can have the brajol. I do eat once a year. I do eat Briana. I do eat a homemade monogot my mother makes, but that's a story for another time. We can delve
Yes.
into that. We can, you and I can delve into that off the podcast.
Yes, I love that though. But it's being married to the belief that you must moderate to be a normal human, because that has
Right.
infiltrated our society, and that's not true. People think that abstaining is like some sort of eating disorder, which it's not. An eating disorder is characterized by like negative lifestyle like impacts, such as you get anxiety around certain foods. Then
Right.
that's an indication that it's crossed over into disordered territory and it's not practicing like abstinence from your triggers.
Right. So it's childhood sexual abuse. It's the moderator, abstainer type of a situation. Is there another one that comes to mind?
People pleasing.
People placing.
That's
Tell
another
me,
one.
what is that?
Certain individuals have the personality where they want to be accepted. It's evolutionarily like in our design to be accepted by the pack, right?
Mhm.
But you have some people that are just more against the grain.
Mhm.
And those people don't have as many issues around food as people pleasers. People pleasers, someone brings in a tray of cookies to work and they feel like they need to have one to make that person that brought them in not feel awkward,
Mhm.
right?
Right. I understand what you're saying. And I'm going to follow up with a question with this, is because right now in nutrition, you hear the word flexible dieting, right? So, and I'm asked about this all the time by other nutritionists. I'm kind of the nutritionist in my area where I'm not so flexible. I mean, I'm seeing, Brianna, I'm seeing a lot of sick people that are coming in, type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular
Yep.
disease, maybe they're post heart attack. And, I was talking to this one nutritionist, and listen, very respectful, practice, great husband and wife team, like them a lot. I just refer them a client for posing and so forth. And we were talking about flexible dieting. And her position was, well, if you have that one cookie, it may not be, so bad, because if you go home then and you're like, oh, you're at the office and they bring in little cake, you're having a little coffee, a little sugar in there and the creamer in there. And then you go home and you just go hog wild because you didn't have any. So what are your thoughts about flexible dieting?
That's a personality thing, and I think that it's very flawed to place everyone. I think that the people that you're talking about probably do better with moderation.
Mhm.
But to extrapolate that to the general public is
Right.
incorrect. We're not all wired up like that, or we would not have an obesity epidemic.
Right.
Uh, it's just not, it's not realistic. We are wired up to eat hyper palatable food and overindulge for like the winter, right?
Right.
And so a lot of people do fall into that, where if they have a little, they will go home and they'll binge too. Like
Right.
it's the opposite of what you just described.
Right.
And so I don't like to place anyone in like you need to flexible diet or there's something wrong with you. And I think that's huge in the fitness world right now, is that you have to be a flexible dieter or there's something
Right.
wrong.
Right. That's exactly correct, because they are in that fitness world. And, I've had some fitness pros on, and they discuss some type of flexible dieting. When a patient comes in, I don't give them that cheat meal or that treat meal, as some people call them. I mean, we need to work. Your cholesterol is 1,000, your triglycerides, Brian, are 1,500. I don't know if that piece of cheesecake right now is
It's a good
probably the
idea.
best. It's not the best. Let's think about that in 6 months from now. And there's something else that you just said, hyperpalatable, because foods today, okay, these ultra processed foods, right? They're palatable, they're
Yeah.
affordable, and they're readily available. And they're all over the place. During COVID, one of the main foods that were purchased right away were these processed foods, omega-6 fatty acids, sugars, and salts, and so forth. So talk a little bit more about that, because I think that's extremely important. We're coming in the cold and flu season again.
Yep.
Individuals should stay away from those hyperpalatable foods.
I think for the most part, I think that we're all designed to overindulge in those. I mean, there's some people that have certain genetic polymorphisms where they are super rigid and they can just have 2 bites of something.
Right.
Most of us are not designed like that, or we
Right.
take it to the other extreme and we become really like obsessed with obtaining all these hyperpalatable foods,
Right.
and it becomes a fixation in the brain. The food companies, that's how they design food, is to make the best profits, right?
Right.
They don't really care about the health and how we're designed. They know. They just
Right.
don't. I mean, it impacts their profit margins. So they're not
Sure, it
gonna
does.
they're
Right.
not gonna care.
It's not going
Um,
to change anytime soon, listeners. So
yeah.
Brian is really hitting some important information right now.
I think that a lot of people, they need to set up the daily habits where they're not indulging in these foods, and it resets their palate, where
Right.
those foods will taste rich at some point, but you need a period of complete abstinence to reset your palate.
Right.
And that could be anywhere. Like, some people, it just depends on your genetics, but it could be 30 days, it could be 90 days. Like,
Talk more about this, because I, in fact, do something like this with my patients. Talk a little bit more about that. I think that's important.
the genetic makeup.
Yes, the genetic makeup.
Yeah,
Correct.
certain people have like COMT mutations where
Uh-huh.
they don't clear catecholamines well.
Right.
So they get a bigger rush from these hyperpalatable foods. And if you get a bigger rush from them, it has more reward value.
Sure.
And so that's why people just don't understand. People that can't moderate these foods are like, what is wrong with them? Well, our wiring is different. Like,
Right.
there's no right or wrong way. There's not a broken human. Like, we're just built different.
It's just different. It's called that epigenetics. Everybody's
Exactly.
different. Listen, my wife brings in a bag of chocolate. Oh, Briana, it's dangerous for me. I'm salivating just thinking about it, for whatever reason. Again, we'll delve into that off the podcast. But she brings in chocolate. My son has the same, and we're just devouring that. It just goes. My mother makes homemade manigot. It's done. It's gone. I don't eat turkey at Thanksgiving or anything. There's no hams for me. Mom, where's the where's the baker's dozen? That's where I live. And then I get that coma on the couch and I sleep. Now,
Yep.
you mentioned that you take, clients off 30 days and 60 days. Explain more about that. I find that interesting too.
Yeah, there's no in the habit modification and rewiring brain pathways. I mean, the research is conflicting. It can take some people 30 days. I know there's programs out there that are like 30 days for behavioral modification, but some people do take longer, and that is shown in the research.
Mm-hmm.
It could take up to a year to rewire those neural pathways,
Mm-hmm.
and that's mainly done in like substance abuse studies.
Right.
But it's all the same. It hits the same reward pathways. Drugs and alcohol hit them harder than food, but they hit them still.
Right.
So you can extrapolate that data to behavior modification with food too.
I find this fascinating because when a patient comes in, we'll do a metabolic detox. And I won't mention companies' names because I use all companies that are out there. And it's 30 days. You and I could be a dangerous team here doing this and turning individuals around. Now, you're talking about neuroplasticity when you're talking about this.
Yep.
behavior modification. I have boards in functional neurology, and it's an interesting field, where you're trying to change those neural pathways to actually think and behave in a different way, correct?
Exactly.
You
And
know,
they are trainable. It just
right.
time and consistency.
So we're talking about mindset here, and one of the seminal research about mindset was Carol Dweck, right? And she wrote that book, Mindset. And, you can change. And for all of our listeners out there, if you are, if you have a condition where nutritional therapy can help, right, Briana? And if
Exactly.
you have something, I mean, you can do this. You just need to, you need to change the way you look at food, that relationship kind of with food. And, it takes time, but you can do it, and it's not so much that you're going to be like a fitness pro, but to regulate somebody's metabolism and biochemistry, right? And have them be more healthy, and have that genetic expression of health is much more, important. Is that correct?
Yes, and I think that a big thing is that we all will slip. We all will make mistakes when we're changing our diet,
Right, right,
and we need to have acceptance and expect that.
right,
Not endorse it, but expect it and
right,
say it's okay. Because when we berate ourselves when we make a mistake, it becomes like a self-fulfilling prophecy and gets
right,
baked into our subconscious, and then we make it a reality. Like, we can never do this. We're never going to do it right. Like, and
right.
then that's what happens.
Listen, I mean, it happened to me in my late 30s where I gained all of that weight, a lot of stress. You start eating. Oh, I can't stop eating. I used to say to myself, I can't stop eating,
Yep.
and it goes back to the family, growing up in a very Italian American immigrant type of a family where food was very important because they came from no food.
Yeah.
And we ate, and I just ate. And I said, wow, this is not me. Division I athlete. Now I'm 250 pounds. Boy, was I unhappy during that time period in my
Yep.
life. So that's not good. So you mentioned about negative bias before.
Yep.
What is let's discuss this a little bit more. How do you overcome it? Because that's a big component in this psychology of eating.
Yeah. So for the negativity bias, the journaling is going to be the best thing, and awareness of the negative thoughts, because
What
we
do you
all
mean by journaling for our listeners?
Yeah, so I have a notebook that I journal in every morning,
Mhm.
and I carry it around with me. And if I have a lot of like reoccurring negative thoughts, like I can't do this, like this isn't going to work,
Mhm.
I write it down, and I do cognitive reappraisal, which is I will dispute the thought and why it is
Mhm.
faulty. And I will write
Mhm.
that down. And writing it down cements it in your brain better than just thinking about these things. I mean, you
Right.
could think about it, but it's not as effective as journaling and writing it down.
Right. Because when you write it down, it becomes more powerful, if you will, and you can
Yep.
see maybe particular patterns, and you can figure, as we used to say back in the day, you can figure your out. You can figure your stuff out. So, yeah, negativity bias, that has to be an important component in all of this.
Yeah, and it's evolutionarily like baked into our conscious mind. So
Right. That's okay. We keep it real and raw. Somebody
sorry.
calls somebody was calling me for Brianna, so it's all good. They didn't leave a message, so that's good. So it must have not been
Perfect.
important. So it's all good. So I was talking with somebody recently about willpower. Does it take willpower to go on a diet? Is that
No.
important?
Well, a
Because
lot of
it's like you get willpower for a weekend, or you get willpower for the weekend for Monday morning, and then Monday morning comes, coffee, toast, pancakes, oh, that went out the window.
yeah, willpower is a limited resource, and we need to treat it as a valued asset, right?
Hmm.
We only have so much in the day, and it's pretty much gone by the end of the day. And that's why I'm a big proponent of habits, because
Hmm.
there is no thinking about it, and it just becomes baked into your baseline expectations for that day. Like, if you work out every day, no matter how you feel, willpower is directed by feelings, right? Uh,
Right,
Habits are not. Like, you just work out every day, no matter what,
right.
at this time, no matter how you feel. That's not willpower. That's just habits.
That's a habit, right? I totally agree with you. So how do you establish good eating habits? If I were a client and coming into you, take me through the process.
I think it's very important to plan your day ahead of time. And that gets into the willpower. You don't want to be deciding things at the end of your day, right?
Right.
I think everyone should be on more so of a Mediterranean diet. That's what I think is the better diet. And so I move people towards that way of eating, with around like 10% wiggle room if they are moderators.
Right. Right.
It's okay to be 100% as long as you don't like get anxiety when you go out with family and think you can't eat anything, and right.
That becomes a big problem too, because you're out and you know, I did a podcast not long ago and we were talking about, you know, part of diet and eating is socialization. You know, you're out with family and friends, your husband, your significant other, your wife, and so forth. So, you know, that's important to note also.
Yeah, and there's never any place that I've ever been to that I haven't been able to find something to meet my dietary needs ever.
Right.
Because
and that's part of planning too. So you would go to a restaurant that had that, right?
Exactly.
Where they would,
I
you know.
don't stop my social life because I want to take care of my health. That's unrealistic. And
right.
I think that people that encourage that or encourage you bringing like your food to a restaurant don't understand the psychological aspect of socialization.
Right.
Like we are social animals.
Yes, we are. And I think that's important because you can always ask them, listen, if a fast food hamburger place can do it your way, you know, I'm sure that, you know, a nice restaurant in your town, you know, I want a nice piece of salmon. I don't want the cream sauce on it. Maybe I want a little balsamic vinaigrette on it, or maybe I just want some veggies on it. Could you please broil it? You know, can you then bring me a side of steamed veggies? And then you got yourself a nice meal. And maybe even a glass of red wine will do you for that, you know, for that night. I make red wine. It's really good, by the way.
You make it?
I do make my own red. We haven't done it in a couple of years. I
did it several years ago too.
I have hundreds of bottles. I think it's almost 800. My wife is like, "What are you doing with this wine? You don't even drink that much." And I said,
"It's just fun to make it, though."
It's in my genes, I guess. And yes, it is a lot of fun to make. So now we were talking about this off air: self-love, authenticity, show yourself compassion when it comes to your diet. Can you know, spend a little time on this? You know, what does that mean?
Yeah, authenticity is like a lifestyle decision. It's a way that you live your life. It's based on like introspection, moral integrity, and a relentless commitment to maintain like personal values, regardless of what anyone thinks. And that part is big. A lot of people are going to think your dietary modifications are crazy, right?
Right.
And so you have to own your decisions and know it's the best for you to be able to do that. And that's really big on dieting mindset, right?
Right. Sure.
And feeling confident in your decision to do this.
Right. I like that a lot. And you have to have that self-love in there with this, right? Because if you don't,
you're not going to take care of your body.
You're not going to take care of your body. And then you can do something destructive, like go out and eat that, you know, ultra processed food, as we were talking about before. You know, do you deal with mainly males or females, or a combination of both? A combination of both. And so what are some tips and tricks if you were dealing with a female, you know, to help them out? What do you do with that?
So dieting for women is a little different than men. Men are pretty like cookie cutter. Their hormones are the same all month long. And so it's pretty easy to tell them, do this all month and you will lose weight. Women, we have different phases, the follicular phase and the luteal phase. The follicular phase, our dieting like is on fire. Our mindset is sharper. This all has to do with estrogen. And our insulin sensitivity is higher. So we don't have those low blood sugar episodes.
Right.
Strength in the gym is up. So I usually have women hit their dieting harder in the first half of their cycle. And then the second half, you're not as insulin sensitive. So I put a big importance on slow digesting carbohydrates.
Right.
Cooked and cooled potatoes with resistant starch.
Love that.
That's where the food that I want them focusing on, and not as high carb and more fats in the second
Right.
half. And not
Right.
pushing yourself like with a ton of cardio in your second half of your cycle, because you're not going to feel that way anyways. And so
Right.
then you're just going to berate yourself if you don't live up to those standards that are unrealistic.
Now, do you make recommendations for exercise and working out?
I do, but that's not like my thing. That's not
Right.
my specialty. But I'm well read in it, and so I can give people guidance. And
Right.
yeah,
Because that's also a component, and I'm the same way. I'm not a personal trainer. I'm not a certified strength and conditioning specialist, and I'll make minor recommendations, and then I will refer them out. So now let's talk about fat loss, because when you're losing weight, you want to lose fat, you want to increase lean muscle mass, you want to decrease percent body fat. We become a better fat burning machine at that point. So talk about fat loss and talk about that with, regarding a woman's body, because we carry a little bit more fat, females than males do.
Yeah, I think women have these lofty goals. I get a lot of women that have like DEXA scans and they're like, well, I'm like 25% body fat and this is like horrible. I want to be like 10%. And I'm like, no. A healthy body fat percentage for a woman is like on the very low end, 18%.
Right.
And normal, 22%, usually like around that area.
Excuse me one second, Briana. And for all of our female listeners, please listen into this, because I'm looking directly into the camera. This is extremely important, what Briana is saying. So please, I'm sorry, go ahead, go on when it comes to this.
Yeah, when you drop your body fat too low, you become amenorrheic, which is means that you lose your period. This happens a lot in the fitness world. Like, those fitness models that you see on Instagram, most of them do not have their period and cannot reproduce.
Right.
They're like, well, I don't care. I don't want to have kids. But they're discounting the effects that progesterone and estrogen have on our moods, our cancer, like on
100%. Right.
And so you can't just discount it because you're not wanting to have children. And you also can't set yourself up for unrealistic expectations by looking at these Instagram models and thinking it's healthy.
Right.
Because it's not usually. Like, I can look at it and be like, okay, that's not healthy. Like, that's not something to strive for. But we don't know as like, well, we just see what's on the magazines and
it looks good. It looks good. They want, individuals want to look that way. They want the six-pack abs. They want the nice shoulders and so forth and so on. And that can be problematic at times. I'm thinking of a client, and, January, everybody wants to lose weight, right, Briana? Everybody wants to lose weight. And then they join these Biggest Loser contests. And there was one woman, very nice woman, but she left the office because she was in this Biggest Loser contest and she wanted to win. It was just pounds. She was just losing. It was just losing pounds. But here she is working out heavy, barely eating. Okay. Her hormones are now all over the place.
Yep.
She's working heavy. She's bench pressing, shoulder, military presses, the whole nine. And now she's gaining weight. She's gaining muscle mass.
Yep.
And she said to me, she goes, oh, I want to look like my 20-year-old daughter. And I said, well, you are who you are. And, I can bring down your percent body fat. I'm going to do it in a healthy way. But what you're doing is very unhealthy. And especially, it's equal with a male and a female, right? It's just unhealthy to do it that way. So I don't like these Biggest Loser.
Too. Right. Like, we can't do that forever. We might feel like we can in the beginning, but we cannot exercise to those extremes and cut all food off, like all of our nourishment like that.
Right. Because you need to have your macronutrients, right? You need to have your proteins, your healthy fats, high impact type carbs, right? You want to have all of that stuff.
I find a lot of these women that go on these extreme diets are like micronutrient deficient too, because they are afraid of calories, right? And so they don't eat.
That was my next point, because now what happens is that their vitamins and minerals, they're depleting because they're not getting enough of the good food stuff that your body is craving. and that you want to eat. And that becomes a major problem. So now what happens is your biochemistry is thrown all over the place, right? Because you don't have, cofactors, enzymes, and all of that stuff, right?
And a lot of people learn the hard way. Like they'll go on these extreme diets and then end up with like cancer, metabolic disorders, or something wrong. And
Right.
they're like, what happened? I was healthy. That's what I see in the news all the time. This person was healthy and died. And I'm like, well, actually, they were
Right.
probably starving themselves and not eating any vegetables. Like,
Right.
that's just because they were an athlete doesn't mean anything.
That is correct, because athletes can be actually unhealthy, even if you're eating a healthy diet, because when you're working out, you have a whole
You
inflammatory
have more
process.
demands and
Right.
inflammation and
Right. And the other thing I'm going to put in, if you're not eating correctly, and maybe you're starving yourself, and maybe you're just eating minimal foods, you get a lot of low grade inflammation in the body. That leads to what we call the intestinal permeability and the leaky gut, right?
exactly.
And now you get weight loss resistance. You can get insulin resistance. Tell us about leaky gut and how all of this plays in. That's
Yeah, a lot
important.
of the women too, they're like, I'm always bloated. I look like I'm 6 months pregnant. And I'm like, well, what are you doing for training? And usually they're running, right? They're
Hmm.
doing excessive cardio because that is the number one thing that compromises gut integrity, right? Is too much cardio.
Right.
Um, and so really I have people like back off on that and eat more fibrous vegetables. I'm not a fan of the carnivore diet at all. It causes gut extinction. And it's really not good.
Yes.
Um, and then I have I use glutamine supplementation. I think that's good too.
It's
Uh,
very important. Glutamine, if you have a leaky gut, it is extremely important, with some probiotics, maybe some
yep.
fermented foods, and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, there's certain things that you can do to maintain your gut integrity, but I think that working, like if you have serious issues, working with a gut doctor is probably your best bet because there's so much like novel research out there right now. Like we're in the infancy. We don't really know, right?
Right.
We just
There's
know certain
actually there's actually research going on with a friend of mine at a major university here in the Northeast, an Ivy League college, looking at intestinal permeability, leaky gut, and so forth and so on. I was having this discussion last night in the office with my partner, Dr. Fuxina. Dr. Fuxina, hopefully you're listening to this right now. And she doesn't like the term leaky gut. She likes intestinal permeability. And I said, listen, it's just a term. It doesn't mean anything. It's just a term so that individuals understand. It's like painkiller. Is there such thing as a painkiller? She looked at me, she goes, you're right. I said, that's right, I'm right. So it's all good that way. So yeah, leaky gut can play a major role in all of this. You mentioned the menstrual cycle. Okay, let's delve into this a little bit more, because I want to do this for our female listeners. And how do you take advantage of that weight loss during that time of the month? I think that's important.
Yeah, so in the follicular phase, you'll have the heightened insulin sensitivity and you can use carbohydrates better. That's the time where you can really like add in some more fruits, bread. If like I'm a fan of like Ezekiel breads.
Right.
You can add in that in your follicular phase. I know it seems like kind of a pain, especially if people like routine to eat the same way the entire month, but women
Mhm.
aren't designed that way.
Right.
Like we have hormonal fluctuations. We have higher progesterone in the second half, which makes blood sugar unstable and increases our metabolic rate. But usually that increases our cravings as well. And
Right.
so it compensates for any metabolic increase. And
Right.
so that's why it's really important to focus on those slow digesting carbohydrates like beans, lentils, cooked and cooled potatoes in the second half of your cycle. And then on your cycle, I really don't think it's best to be training like a maniac. Like a lot of
Right.
people just keep training, and I'm like, no,
Well,
your
they want
body.
to feel better. They want to feel better, and they think that they're feeling better when they're doing that, right?
Yep. And so in the follicular phase, the recovery from exercise is better too. You could probably do less rest days during the follicular phase. And then during the luteal phase, you want to back it down to probably 4 times a week
Right.
because you're not going to have the energy anyways. But a lot of women push themselves through that. Like we're just designed to like push through uncomfortable like things all the time.
Right.
And
So
Oh,
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
yeah. Another thing too is I do not put a lot of stock in like scale measurements in the second half of the cycle because progesterone has the tendency to make us hold water.
Yes.
So you can gain up, like some women gain upwards of 10 pounds.
I was
And
going
then,
to say 7, 8, 9 pounds. Right.
yep,
Right.
yep, that's normal.
And
then
then
they,
you feel bad, and then you feel worse about yourself too.
yeah, so I have them stay off the scale and usually just weigh in like a couple times in the follicular phase. And that's enough to see if you're making progress every month. Like,
I think this is
yep, go ahead.
I think this is important because, I find that patients, they love to get on that scale all the time. Right, Briana?
Yep. Yep.
You
And they
know,
become emotionally attached to the number.
yes. Patients come in and they're like, I weighed myself yesterday and I was 190, and I weighed myself today and I was 192. And they're like, oh my goodness, I can't deal with this. And I'm like, huh? And that's not good to weigh yourself all the time, right?
No, and I think that women have been like taught too since we were young. Like I was, and I know every woman I know was taught that our worth is really considered based off of our body. and
Right.
so and so it's really like a mind thing you have to undo when you step on that scale to say it's
Right.
data. It doesn't mean anything about like what I'm doing with my diet. If I know that I've been eating healthy and hitting my caloric requirements and working out, then I need to stop putting so much value in this number.
During the 80s and the 90s, from what I remember, it was really a time where you looked at like the supermodels, males and females, and you aspired to be like them. And it's not like that anymore because it could be very unhealthy in how they in fact got that way.
Exactly.
For that particular photo shoot that they did. And there were all these magazines that friends were buying, and I want to get this jacket because look at this guy and he looks like this, and he had no shirt on, he just had the jacket on, and he's got the nice six-pack abs. When we were younger, we had six-pack abs when we were working out, but
yeah,
to get to that point, sometimes it's not exactly the most healthy way to do that. So I think that's an important point.
Not at all.
You have to be.
That's a big thing too with women. Like a lot of those girls in the magazines, like there's entire books on this. They'll have cocaine habits. They'll be eating, like some models like eat tissue to curb their appetite. Like it's just extreme, strange things.
Crazy,
and
right? Yeah.
Unhealthy. Like,
so if you're eating tissues
right
now, call one of us because we need to get some macros and micros going on here. We don't want you to eat tissues at all or do anything.
Those bodies are not realistic to strive for at all. We need to get away from that.
And not only that, it's also what I find out, I'm getting patients in recently, yet again, it comes in cycles where they want some type of appetite suppressant, or they want some type of pharmaceutical, to burn their fat, if you will.
Yep.
So, that's not healthy also.
No, they're amphetamines. Phentermine is the main one that's used, and it's an amphetamine.
And it's not good.
Like you're going to increase your catecholamines, which is going to increase your heart disease risk. Like there's so many downfalls of it. And plus it makes you like crazy. Like I've known people that have like used that method for weight loss and it makes them like insane.
Interestingly, I'm just thinking about it, when I first started getting into nutrition, there was this one company, I won't mention their name, and they had a weight loss type of a product, and it had Ma Wang in there. If you remember what that was, that's actually banned now.
Yep.
Right, in the United States. It is an amphetaminic type of a situation. And I remember actually going to the hospital because I took the pill that had the Ma Wang in it. Next thing you know, and I'm like, oh my God, my heart's beating. I'm blacking out. So there's, the point is that there are much better strategies, to lose weight than what we're, than taking those types of issues. So we don't want, individuals to do that. Let's deal with menopause because that's a whole different situation, right? When you're dealing with, eating and eating psychology, mind, body, and nutrition. Tell us about this.
Yeah, so menopause, your hormonal environment shifts and your progesterone drops, and so does your estrogen, which causes like a state of insulin resistance. And so that's why you see a lot of like belly fat in postmenopausal women. But the problem I run a fat loss like program. And so I deal with a lot of women on this, and they can't get over the fact that yes, it does slow fat loss, but it will not stop it. Like if you're in a calorie deficit, you will lose fat no matter what. Like, yes, your moods are going to be a little more unstable. I'm a fan of bioidentical hormones and working with your doctor to get them optimized, and then you won't have these issues. But I think that's the biggest problem in menopause, is that people accept, because there's so much stuff on the internet that says that you can't, or it's really hard. I'm like, you just need to dial in your habits.
Right.
Like, yeah, your fat is more placed around your belly because of insulin resistance, but you can still lose fat.
Right. And it's and they do have a tough time during menopause. And you know what they do? They go to Dr. Google and they want to do whatever that says. So tell us about your fat loss program.
Yes. So I have a fat loss program. I partnered up with my husband, Alex Leaf, and a friend, Ari Witten. He has the Energy Blueprint podcast. And we developed a program. It has 18 modules and talks about all the things fat loss that other people don't talk about, like hormesis and red light therapy and cold exposure, dieting mindset, menopause. And we run a free Facebook group that has like question and answers. And
and I think Ari and I just became friends on Facebook, as a matter of fact, within
he's a great guy.
Yeah, within the last couple of days. So I may have to call him up. Maybe we'll have to get him on, and we'll get you and your husband on for a podcast. So we're coming up on an hour. It's been quick. This has been a great conversation, but we're not done yet. We're not done yet. Is there anything else that you want to discuss when it comes to the dynamic eating psychology and food that we haven't covered? Any other thoughts?
I think that it's just, people need to look at this as a life process instead of like something they do for a short period of time. Whatever habits you're adopting to lose the weight, they need to be sustainable for the rest of your life. Like, you can't go back to what the behaviors that enabled you to gain too much fat.
Right.
Like, and so it needs to be a whole mindset shift around the dieting.
Briana, I think that's so important. And when you were just discussing that, I wrote down two patients' names, and I'm not going to mention their names, so don't worry about it. And they know who they are. When somebody said, when somebody will say to me, "When do I go back to eating normal?" I look at them and I say, "Wow." I said, we have a further issue here, because it's not normal. It's not normal. We get that rebound when we go on these fad diets, right? You lose it, and you gain it back, and then you gain another 15 pounds back because you feel so bad about yourself. You lost this weight, and it's not sustainable. And I love that. You got to make that lifestyle change. You got to make that lifestyle change, because without that lifestyle change, it's not going to happen.
Yeah. And I mean, you can pick your hard, right? You can either have a hard time by having too much fat and being really unhealthy and shortening your lifespan, or you can reframe it and make the working out and the honoring your body. I definitely don't think it's hard to change your behaviors like once you get there, but during the process, it's all mental. Like, if you don't feel well and your hormones are off balance because you're making incorrect food choices, then that needs to go. You're not being nice to your body. Right.
And your body's not going to be nice to you either, right, Brian?
Exactly.
It's not going to be nice to you. And, at some point in time, you're going to get one of those chronic lifestyle diseases. You may get that belly fat that goes around, and that's not good at all. So, no, we don't want that to happen. How can our listening audience contact you? If they want to contact you, how can they contact you?
I have a website. It is brianatheroux.com. And I'm on Facebook at Briana Theroux. Instagram is Lift Heavy, Breathe Easy. And I put out a bunch of free content every week. So, and I have a YouTube. It's under Briana Theroux as well. And so I'll put out videos on all this too.
And I've listened to the videos and they are excellent. Her and her husband are discussing, sometimes it's one or the other, but they are excellent. So for our listening audience, contact Briana. I recommend her. You can see the passion, you can see the knowledge, wow, and you can see the experience just coming out. So it's very important. If you're having issues, whether you're male or female, if you're female and you're going through that menopause, give her a call, and at least she'll be able to, discuss and see if she can help you out. So I think that's important also. So, wow, we're almost up at that hour already. So this has been interesting. It's gone very, very quickly. So Briana, thank you very much for coming on. It's been a pleasure. There's so much to talk about. I think we're going to have you, not even think, we're going to have you back on. Maybe we'll bring your husband into it too. And we'll have a discussion. I know he's an adjunct professor like I am in competing universities, but it's all good. It's all good. So I want to thank everybody for listening. Go to Suburban Wellness Group on YouTube, like us, so that you don't miss this or any other podcast. You can give us a call at Suburban Wellness Group, 973-483-2277. Briana, thank you very much for coming on. It's a great conversation. Take care now. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.